trying to think of around if there's anything much else than that. Obviously, in Fort Edmonton, you've got Mr. Rowan's house also, which is this huge, massive house that's basically just for him and his family. That said, it's so big that in the winter they would close up half of it so they don't have to heat most of it. And they would be collecting so many furs that they'd pretty much fill up half the house with furs, so you couldn't even move in it. So that would insulate that part of the house, and they're only heating half of it too. But then in the summer, all the furs are gone, and now you've got guest bedrooms for all the people traveling here and through. It's worth noting, actually, in terms of talking about travelers, that the reason that like 1846 is the year they depict of the fort, and the year that we know more about that fort than any other, is that in 1846 there was actually a group of spies that were sent to Fort Edmonton, who were investigating. It was during the time that the U.S. was kind of threatening to sort of take over parts of Canada, and there was a lot of anxiety around that, and so the Canadian government was trying to figure out where in this area that is not quite our control yet. It's not even Canada yet, but where would be some good places to put military change into kind of military spots for us. And so these guys came up disguised as eccentric tourists. So they're the first tourists to ever pass through Edmonton. And they stayed at John Rowan's house, and they were just like, oh, we're having such a great time, and such. And while everyone was asleep, they'd go around like measuring the walls of the fort and like doing all these surveys. And so we have all their reports that document and there are sketches of what the fort looked like and descriptions of the people and all these things from their visit in 1846. And so so John Rowan would host people who would travel through, so eccentric tourists, I guess, would also get to stay at John Rowan's house. That'd be most of your areas. You'd have a bunch of outhouses, which is again part of the idea that you could smell Fort Edmonton before you could see Fort Edmonton on the river and such. But
And then last one, what was like lifestyle like?
Lifestyle, it was hard. I think I am constantly amazed by the stories of fur traders and the things that they sort of lived through and would do. The strength of them, I mean, just to work for the company, you needed to be able to carry 2 80-pound bales of fur, so 160 pounds. And that's like the bare minimum. And you'd get kids who were like 12 joining the company who could carry 160 pounds. And as I say, if you could only carry that, they would make fun of you because that's all you can carry. Like guys would carry like 4, so I think 320 pounds. And it's like, yep, no problem, I can carry this. And not only be able to carry it, but you have to be able to carry it for at least a mile. And so like, just pick that kind of weight up and walk a mile with it. It's like insane. So many of them, they didn't have access to medicine the way that we do. And so the things that they would do, like so many of them would be, I mean, you don't want to drink out of the North Saskatchewan around here. We're so far downstream. But when you're on a Voyager or on a York boat and you've been traveling for the longest time and you're way even further downstream than here, it's like, what's your option? Are you not going to drink water for a while? So, I mean, so many of them would have all sorts of intestinal digestive issues and stuff. There's a story of one fur trader who actually, like, he had all of these things wrong with him, and doctors opened up his stomach to look at and find out what was wrong. And when they sewed him back up, they actually left a hole there so that they could like put things in through his stomach and check if it was still digesting and such. And he lived for years like this. And just like there's all these crazy stories of the kind of things about fur traders, or like, I mean, teeth getting or even people just coming out and it's being like, there's no dental care out there, so we're just going to rip out all of your teeth before you come out.
Grandmother.
I've since heard stories of fur traders and things like that. It was a tough lifestyle. You had to be strong. I mean, the leading cause of death was essentially just working yourself to death. It wasn't old age or anything like that. They talk about like hernias from like overlifting and things like that, but it's basically just like overwork was your leading cause of death. At the same time, a lot of, I mean, there was people who really clearly enjoyed what they were doing and enjoyed the work. It was an interesting time in terms of, it was a relatively peaceful time out here, and even kind of relations with Aboriginal people are very different than they would be once this area starts becoming more settled, is the term, I guess, because it's more sort of co-living and things like that. And so yeah, very, very different, but yeah, very busy, and definitely a hard time to live in. But yeah, simpler time, and
Yeah. Okay, thank you.